Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday evening, end of July. It's the off season, but we're all back stateside. Joining us in New York City is Tim Bontemps.
Hello there, everybody.
Tim's having the off season, MacMahon. He is in the off season mode. That's all I'm going to say. Joining us from Dallas, Texas, who celebrated his first anniversary this weekend, and I also think you're in the off-season mode there. And happy anniversary, Band MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. I'll pass that on to the IT department.
By the way, I got 3 stories running this weekend. I'm going to Vegas for Team USA, so I don't know if that's the same off-season
all right, take
deal
it
that you are.
Take
Just
it
saying.
easy.
You can get some small season activities in Vegas if you so choose.
I certainly could. I certainly could if I chose.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had a slowdown in NBA transactions, but there's stuff starting to get moving. And one of the things we got to keep an eye on here is this is from now until the start of training camp is really extension season. There are a bunch of players who are eligible for extensions. Not all of them are eligible at this moment. Some other eligibility deadlines roll out over the next 2 months. That it has to do with when they signed their last contracts. And we're still climbing out of that weird 2 COVID seasons where some of the dates were altered about when their last contracts were signed. They were like translated to the regular calendar. So they kind of come at weird times. So not everybody that we're going to talk about is extension eligible this second, but they are going to be extension eligible before the start of the season and into the season in some cases. And this has become the norm now. Star free agency has become extremely rare. The LeBron James, Kevin Durant, unrestricted free agents moving. It has now become an era where the stars take their money that has been built into the CBA to try to keep them from leaving, and then they just demand trades. So that's basically what happens.
Just how everybody wanted it to, right?
Well, it is sort of actually what the system intended it to be. I mean, the reason this is all happening is because Kevin Durant left the Thunder without them getting anything for him because they were not in a position to give him. They couldn't get an answer on whether he would stay there long term or not before July of 2016 because of the way the rules are set up. Now, the way the rules are set up, you have the ability to say, hey, you can either get as much money or more money early to stay. And then if you don't take it, it's an indication of where your mindset is at. And then a team has a choice to say, all right, like, do we roll the dice and see if we can keep this guy, or do we turn around and move him for a whole bunch of stuff? So it is sort of,
well, but then
how it was designed to be.
If you do take it and you turn around a year later or 2 years later and say, hey, I know I'm locked up long term, but get me the hell out of here, and I only want to go to one place. That's not the way it was intended. But this conversation was not intended to weigh the pros and cons of the CBA ramifications. Wendy, take the wheel back.
That's right. So let's discuss some of the guys who have contract extension situations coming up. It goes without saying that if you're a star player, your team does not want you to get to unrestricted free agency, even if they're not crazy about keeping you. They don't want you to get to unrestricted free agency because then they lose leverage and lose control. So some of these guys have 1 year left on their contracts. That's where there's a little bit more urgency. Some of the guys have 2 years left on their contracts, but still teams may want to lock them up. So the first one we're going to talk about is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is extension eligible starting this week, August 4th. He has 2 years. What's that?
Friday.
He has technically 2 years left on his contract, but the last year of it is a player option. So he can be a free agent next summer. The Lakers can sign him. Let me get the number. All this stuff is courtesy of Bobby Marks, whose information is solid gold.
While you're pulling this up, he doesn't actually have a player option. in a weird quirk. He has this thing, again, to go back to sort of a technical CBA thing. He has this thing called an early termination option. And you might say, well, what's the difference with that? Well, the difference is if he opts out of that ETO, he can't extend his contract. So to do an extension, he has to opt into that deal and then extend for 3 years off of that, as opposed to what a lot of these guys could do in theory, which is opt out and then extend. It's a weird contract that way because most of these contracts
I don't think
have
you have
player
that quite
options.
right. I don't think you have that
No,
quite right.
I checked with Bobby before we started.
Okay, well, early termination option means that your contract is a full length and you can kill the last year of the deal. A player option means that your deal ends and you can opt in to the last year.
Well, yes, but I'm saying that you can't exercise an ETO and then extend. You have to take the year is what I mean. Well, the player option, he could get a raise in the last year is my point.
Yes, that's correct. But
and he could extend earlier.
You fooled me with the terminology because ETO, if you say nothing, your contract keeps going. If you can only opt out, you can't opt in.
Right.
So all right, forget about all that. That's hoping you just fast forward. MacMahon was like, whatever. All right. Anyway, here's the point.
Well,
starting on Friday, the Lakers can give him 3 years and $170 million more in his contract, which would put him under contract for a total of 5 years. The 2 he's got left and 3 more, taking him, basically to the edge of his prime, if not past it. The complicating factor here is that LeBron James has 1 year left on his contract. And by the way, at this moment, I just want to send as good a wishes. I know this has been said 1,000 times. As good a wishes as possible to the James family after what happened with Bronny. That situation absolutely just shook me. We know that this happens to basketball players. We've seen it. It's been tragic. It's been a fork in the road for some guys. It's been only a small part of some guys' careers. It's ended some guys' careers. I don't know what's going to happen with Bronny. I just know that when I got the statement sent to me by text, I hadn't heard about it. It hit me, I got the statement sent to me. And when I read the statement, I was absolutely frozen at those words. So, it goes without saying. I don't know Bronny personally, but obviously I saw him when he was a toddler. I have watched him grow up. That was a blow. And obviously I'm just an ancillary factor here. So I wish LeBron, Savannah, and Bronny and the rest of the family nothing but the best. So, but anyway, LeBron has 1 year left on his contract. He can opt in for another year after that. But as you're the Lakers, you have to do some succession planning to a degree. You're obviously trying to win this year, but you've got to watch what you're doing. And, to me, I think you absolutely extend Anthony Davis, but it may not be a no-brainer.
Bontemps?
Well, there's a couple things here. The reason, again, to go back to this ETO thing, the reason this thing matters is he's currently on a 30% max. So if he's extending off of a 30% max, as opposed to getting a 35% max, which is as long as he's been in the league, he has the ability to have next year as a free agent. So he can't get a full extension to the numbers he would want off of the current deal that he's got. So I do wonder if the Anthony Davis camp decides, hey, it's better for us to wait until next summer, get to free agency, and then sign a 5-year deal at the full 35% max, which would be, a very, very large number. I don't know the exact number. It'd probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of the Jaylen Brown numbers, which is a 5-year deal north of $300 million. So, that is part of the reason why this thing does matter from a option standpoint, because they can't do that. And he would have to have these 2 years on his deal and then sign up for 3 more. Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm the Lakers, given how much they have struggled in the past, I mean, it's easy to forget now because they have LeBron and AD, but how many years did we spend with the Lakers striking out on one star player after another in free agency? From LaMarcus Aldridge to all these other guys who, they were going to sign or they tried to sign and then they didn't sign. I think it'd be hard for them to walk away from AD or not want to extend him at that number. I think the more interesting question there is if they offer him that 3-year extension, is AD willing to take it? Because he could be leaving a lot of money on the table next summer if he does.
Well, and you'd be extending him for his age 32, 33, 34 seasons. So optimistically, tail end of his prime, probably the start of the decline. Although, I mean, obviously there's a teammate of his who's evidence that, you don't necessarily need to start declining in your early to mid 30s, but I would be motivated by the Lakers to get it done now because 35% for Anthony Davis for those years with all his durability issues, that would be terrifying.
Let me ballpark the numbers here. If he signs an extension this year, his contract will be 5 years in the neighborhood of $255 million left, including this year. So it'll be this year plus 4. So then if he were to opt out, he would be able to sign a new deal for 5 and 300 and something for next year plus 4. So it would be an extra year. It's not quite apples to apples, but that is an extra year and an extra, $50 million, $50 to $60 million.
When he'd be 35 on that extra year. Right.
But I will point something else out. The last time Anthony Davis had a chance to do a contract, after he was traded to the Lakers, he had 1 year left on his deal after being traded from New Orleans. He became a free agent. He did not extend. At that time, he had, I believe it was 8 or no, I guess it was maybe, what was it? He could have signed a 1+1. He could have taken a 1-year contract plus an option and the next year signed and gotten the 10-year max number. He could have, he had extended. If he'd done a 1+1, he could have gotten more money if he had just waited. And instead he did a full 5-year deal, but was fully guaranteed. And I do think that his injury history played a factor in that decision. If you remember, if you're a Lakers fan, you may remember that summer AD took some period of days before he agreed to that extension. He was sitting there as an unrestricted free agent. There was no real doubt that he was going to re-sign. He had a great beginning with the Lakers, obviously winning the title. But he thought about how he was going to structure his contract. And ultimately he took the protection of the money in the years over rolling the dice a little bit to get a little bit more, more money down the road. So I don't know what he'll do in this time, but just know that his actions have already been take what's guaranteed there. And so for that reason, I think that there's, if the Lakers will offer this, I think, he may seriously consider taking it, even though you're right, Mr. Bontemps, that he can't get more money by waiting a year. I also think that while he has been injury prone, I don't think it's ever going to change. I think he's going to be injury prone going forward. I don't see his game eroding with age, unless you guys disagree with me. I think he's going to have the same talents as he goes forward.
I would say his playoff run, he was inconsistent offensively, but he was a dominant defensive presence. I mean, there is definitely absolutely zero indication that he'd lost, even a smidgen of a step. Defense, the guy averaged 14 rebounds, over 3 blocks per game in the playoffs. You can quibble with his offensive consistency, but I don't see a guy who his game is in decline.
Well, the issue, I think that the concern from a decline standpoint is that his body just breaks down, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the concern. I mean,
his conditioning wasn't exceptional this last year. I think that's fair to say.
yeah, I mean, I think to me, that's really the issue. It's that if you look at him from that standpoint, with all the injuries he's had, is he gonna wear down from that standpoint over the next few years? But again, I think for where the Lakers are at, I think it makes sense for them to extend him and have a guy there, because as we've seen, you need to have a star to get other stars to come there. And whether LeBron is still there or not, if you have Anthony Davis there in the paint, that gives you a guy to say, hey, come play with AD on the Lakers. And then you can, we've got Austin Reeves, we've got these other guys, like come play with him there instead of having to start over. Instead of starting over with, we got to go find a couple of guys and start over that way. So I think it makes sense for the Lakers. And, Bobby Marks has done all this cap stuff for us. Like, if he extends off this current deal, you're talking about a salary right now that's around 30% of the cap, with the cap going up probably 10% every year. That it's not going to be a cheap extension down the road, but I think everybody needs to start thinking more about this from a percentage of the cap standpoint instead of a dollar standpoint, because all the dollars are going to be crazy. And if he, like MacMahon said before, to me, the scarier thing for the Lakers is if they get to next summer, because to me, if I'm AD, I have kind of the Lakers over a barrel for all these reasons we've talked about. And because they have this ETO and they can't extend normally, I'm waiting till next summer. I'm opting out of the deal, saying, hey, give me my 5 years, sign me up with a contract that would start next season at $49 million instead of the 43 he's owed currently. And again, we're talking about a deal that's way over $300 million at that point.
And that pays him through 35.
Through an extra year. Right. So that's why if I'm the Lakers and I could get him through his age 34 season now, like to me, if I'm Rob Pelinka, I'm driving over to the Clutch offices or wherever they'd have a meeting on Friday, and I'd have that extension. I'd sit down like, AD, I want to have you here the next 5 years. Let's lock this in, because the back end of that could be a little rough, but it's a lot better to me than signing him up at a much higher number. And like MacMahon said, you're talking about paying him $70 million when he's 35, whatever the number would be. Like I'd rather get away from doing that.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting for sure. We'll see how that plays out. I feel I don't know, there's no time crunch on that. He doesn't have to make a decision by August 5th or anything. But I do think there is an expectation that the Lakers do make some sort of offer this week, or at least show their intention to make such an offer. All right. The other really big name this offseason, well, there's a couple with the Clippers we'll talk about in a second. I just want to go over Giannis's situation. Giannis can't extend his contract until September 22nd, so it's not something that's pressing now. I do think it'll be a topic when he comes and reports for training camp.
Assuming he hasn't signed already.
He could have signed. That's true. I saw some footage of him at a camp he was doing this last week. He had that knee wrapped up and he wasn't, hopping around like normal. So we'll see where that knee procedure has him, as well. As a side note. Hasn't officially been ruled out of playing for Greece in the World Cup. But again, if you saw that footage, there's no way I don't think there's any way he's playing. So he is eligible. Now he has the inverse contract that Bontemps was talking about. He has a player option, not an ETO. So his contract has 2 years left on it, but he has an opt-out that he can execute. He can extend for 3 years and 170 million, just like AD. We've talked about this a little bit. We'll talk about it more. If Giannis doesn't extend, I don't necessarily think it's a red alarm. The challenge that the Bucks are in is that their primary supporting cast are all in their 30s, and Giannis is in his 20s. His time frame and their time frame are not matched. The Bucks are going to have a significant challenge at some point turning this roster over and matching Giannis, because they've exhausted so much of their opportunity to build up players with keeping the team around Giannis. Having said that, that's a championship level team today, and for the foreseeable future, for the short-term future at least. So I don't think it's something that anybody should lose sleep over. I think after they re-sign Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez, it gives them encouragement to go to Giannis with an offer to see where he's at on it. It wouldn't surprise me if he did sign it. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't sign it. I'm not going to overreact either direction right now, Bontemps.
I'd be pretty surprised if he signed it, if only because we've seen how he's handled this in the past, which is to sort of make sure that there's maximum leverage on Milwaukee to do the things he wants to do. And because, another guy that they have to worry about trying to get extended, Drew Holiday, is going to be sitting out there until the end of the regular season, because he can't extend until, I think, late February 22nd. So even after the trade deadline on his contract, it puts them in a situation where, Giannis, I think if he doesn't extend now, you get to the offseason, you see what happens with Drew Holiday, then you assess the situation in Milwaukee, you decide if you want to add some extra years to your contract or not. If you go back to when Giannis signed the Supermax, when did he sign it? Like we've talked about many times, after they made the Drew Holiday trade, it was like, okay, these guys stepped up and did what I wanted them to do. They got Drew Holiday in here to go with Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton. Now I'm going to sign the Supermax. So I agree with you. I don't think it's a sign that Giannis is definitely leaving if he doesn't sign it this fall, but I would be pretty surprised if he did sign it for that same reason. I think he's going to wait until next summer. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Assess the situation in Milwaukee and then decide what he wants to do as opposed to doing it now.
Yeah, and the thing with Giannis is he has pretty consistently left the door cracked as far as at some point maybe exploring taking his career somewhere else. He has not necessarily been you haven't heard 10 toes down, to use a Dame term.
Yeah, well, that
well,
if he said that, you'd really have to get worried if he said that.
Yeah, right. But that doesn't necessarily, it's funny though, because in today's NBA, signing an extension doesn't necessarily mean you're committed to staying somewhere either. Like obviously we've seen that. I don't know if, like you said, I don't know when or if we'll see another superstar of that caliber become a free agent. Kawhi might be the last one in a long, long time.
I do think the one thing that, I also do think the one thing that we have to remember with this stuff is because we've been in this flat cap environment and the money didn't change for so long, I do think we have to wait a few years and see if this starts to shift as the numbers start to skyrocket year after year money-wise, right? Like free agency hasn't really existed because there's just been this logjam of contracts. But now the salary cap is probably going to exceed the rate that these contracts go from a raise standpoint over the next several years. There's going to be a lot more salary cap space. There's going to be a lot more teams trying to do stuff. And I think that could end up leading to us getting back that direction again. But certainly the way it's been, like, yeah, I mean, other than Kawhi, I'm trying to think, has there been anybody since Kawhi of that caliber that's even gotten to free agency? Really?
Jalen Brunson was the best of that class. Off the top of my head, who
he certainly shouldn't have. Talk about a guy should have been extended.
Right. Who's the most impactful player, the biggest name that went in unrestricted free agency this year? Fred VanVleet?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, so like what Bontemps is talking about, because of COVID, the cap was actually would have fallen. They artificially kept it up because of the revenue situation. And they just had to dig their way through that. Now the league is making good money again. This year it went up to avoid what happened in 2016 where the cap jumped very high. The new collective bargaining agreement that just took effect limits the amount that the salary cap can increase per year. and it's capped at 10%. And it first year of this new rule, it jumped 10%. And especially with new television money coming in a couple of years, they'll have to spread that in over several years. It'll jump 10. People are forecasting that it's going to jump 10% for a number of years in a row. So when you think about potentially the cap jumping 30 to 40% over 4 years, I mean, that's a humongous increase.
Got to be over 200 million by the end of the decade. That's the kind of jumps we're talking about.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, we're going to start to see. We haven't seen a player make $60 million yet, but there are contracts on the books that breach 60 million.
Mm-hmm.
In the foreseeable future, we're going to see contracts for over $70 million. Not necessarily where the guys will be making it, but where, like, if guys sign some of these extensions either during this year or next summer, you're going to see the back end of those deals creep over 70 million.
Look, by the time these young players right now, Anthony Edwards, who just signed his extension, Luka's in the middle of his extension, these guys could be making $100 million a year by the time those guys are done playing, because the way these numbers are going, it's going to go
that's right,
super duper high.
Right. Especially since it's turning into a league where it's sort of have and have nots. There's a gulf opening up between players, but
I would say
haves
and have not as much, because those minimum deals,
they ain't have nots.
The minimum deals are now over $3 million if you're a veteran.
Like we can put our violins down.
So Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can both extend for 4 seasons and $224 million. Kawhi can extend now. Paul has to wait until September 1st to extend. I don't know if there's any chance that those guys get 4-year extensions. They both can be free agents after next season because they have player options. There's no chance that they're getting extended 4 years. I would be stunned if they get extended 4 years. That doesn't mean that they can't get extended, though, and that the Clippers won't make an offer, maybe even a multi-year offer. And this is one of the big questions, I think, for this upcoming season that hasn't been answered yet. What are the Clippers going to do with PG and Kawhi? And MacMahon, I think, obviously health plays a huge factor here, but also leverage. Typically, a player is a star player has the leverage because he's like, well, listen, if you don't sign me, I'm going to be an unrestricted free agent. I'm going to walk. There's certainly interest in these guys, but I don't know how much there's a belief that these guys would leave Los Angeles.
Well, there's that. And like, also I'd be curious to see exactly how much interest there would be. Obviously, we're talking about all NBA talent, with Kawhi, multi-times finals MVP, but like, there's teams that aren't going to be really excited about signing up for, hey, you play when you want to play. And it's not just a game to game type situation, but like it's a half to half kind of situation. And I think the Clippers have leaned so much into, obviously, open up this potential championship window. When you get a Kawhi Leonard in free agency and a Paul George and kind of as part of that free agency, you're going to, those guys will have control of the franchise. And you kind of get a sense that they're trying to figure out, hey, what's the right mix here between us actually being able to run our team, and having those guys be the star players. And the deal hasn't produced what the Clippers were anticipating. That's for sure. I don't know. This one's tough. And the other factor is the Clippers are opening up a new arena.
That is, there's the other factor, which is James Harden.
Yeah.
And if they are able to execute that type of trade, number one, do they extend Harden?
They
Actually,
can't
extend. You're
That's
right. Number one, did they wait and see how that group looks together? Number two, Is that something that, acquiring Harden changes the calculus? I don't know. I just know there's a lot of unanswered questions with the Clippers right now.
Yeah.
Well, and you've also got the factor of the team across the hall, at least for now, has a certain guy who could be going elsewhere next year. Obviously, like you said earlier, we'll see what happens with Bronny. Hopefully he is back playing very soon and feeling good. But certainly that, LeBron has the ability to be a free agent. His son could be in the league. There's plenty of talk about that. Maybe LeBron retires. Who knows? But if he's not on the Lakers next year, all of a sudden they've got a max salary slot across the hall, and either Paul George or Kawhi Leonard wouldn't have to leave LA and could still play there. And certainly the Clippers don't want to go into a new arena losing players to the team across the hall. I think
the Clippers are incentivized to sign them. I just don't think they're incentivized to sign them for 4 years.
Right. And then the other thing, though, is the Clippers, not only are they opening up a new arena, not only are they like wanting to remain competitive. I'm not going to say contenders because they haven't earned that. That was anointed on them and they haven't earned it. But dude, they still owe, this year's not relevant in this conversation, but they owe this pick to OKC. 2025 is a swap and they owe 2026. So they still got a lot of paying up to do for the original, kind of related deals that brought in Kawhi and Paul George.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to sort out there. And do they wait? Do they wait and see if guys like Drew Holiday and Pascal Siakam and some of these other guys who can extend are free agents next summer? Do they go try to get some of those guys? They're
not going to have control over that because obviously it's going to be Kawhi and Paul George's options, whether they opt in or out.
Well, true, but you would think if they're not extended, I think you would have to assume that they will both opt out. Now, maybe they won't, but assuming health, they're probably going to opt out. So I think that would be my if I'm not going to extend them now, let's say they both go to Lawrence Frank and Trent Redden and say, hey, we'll extend, but we'll extend it a 4-year max. And if Lawrence and Trent say, yeah, we're okay, we're going to wait. My assumption would be, assuming they are able to play, that next summer they will opt out and be free agents. So, if you're the Clippers and you are going to do an arena, you have the certainty of having those guys on your team potentially with all the issues that come with them from an availability standpoint. Or do you say, hey, look, we're the Clippers. We've got this brand new arena. We've got the richest guy in the world, basically owning our team, willing to spend whatever it takes to win. We could get any
He's
players
not the richest guy
want.
in the world. He's the richest guy in the NBA.
Well, he's up there. He's got more money than he knows what to do with, and he loves to spend it on his team. And, it's going to be fascinating to see what they do because they'll have some options available if they decide to go that route to where they don't have to be bad, to MacMahon's point, because they have that to worry about.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting game of cat and mouse there. Like you said, that if they don't extend these guys for the start of the season, that's going to be hanging out there all season. What's going to happen with these guys? And especially with the one guy in particular who's made it very clear where he wants to be, which is there.
Well, and also you have this, it's not just about looking at spreadsheets and kind of trying to project things. You have to deal with the human element here. And the human element with Kawhi Leonard is if he's not happy, it might not be pretty. We've seen that. We've seen that in San Antonio.
For sure. Okay. So here's another interesting one. Eligible now, Klay Thompson of the Warriors. He can go 4 seasons, $224 million. He is earning, let me get the exact number. I think he's earning 40. He's got 1 year left. Then he could be a free agent. Yeah, 43 million. Now, I'll just point out that twice now, the Warriors have extended core players, Andrew Wiggins and now Draymond Green, where they took pay cuts out of the salaries that they were in and got guaranteed long-term money, but they took pay cuts. I don't want to assume, but I know that Klay has never been totally motivated by money, but it's not nothing. But I'm not sure he performed like a $43 million player last year. So
I mean, we all love Klay, but he didn't perform like a $43 million player last year, even though he got much better as the year went on. Like, he's had a couple of major injuries. I think this one's very simple. Klay's either going to do what Draymond did this offseason and get to the end of the season, presumably, because I doubt it'll happen on an extension, and agree to take probably somewhere in the same ballpark, like a 3 or 4 for 100-ish kind of deal, and be in the low to mid 20s and be somewhere around 16-70% of the cap going forward, or he'll go take a bunch of money elsewhere and leave. Like, that'll be one or the other. Like, I think if he wants to get a huge number, it's not going to come from them.
I would agree. I would say even if he has a killer year this year, even if he rebounds to let's just say he rebounds to pre-injury, pre ACL tear, ACL tear Klay. If that happens, which I don't even know if it's possible.
I mean, I would say just if he's what he was last year, he scored 22 points a game and shot 41% from three. He was very good last year.
Offensively, he wasn't that far off.
I just don't think they can have a player making that much money anymore.
Oh, I agree with that.
I don't think it's a matter of judging his talent. I just don't think they can afford it.
Well, I think they could afford it if he was still playing like an all NBA guard, like he was before he tore his Achilles and tore his ACL.
Yeah, he was also one of the elite defenders in the league.
That was what made him an all NBA player, because he was an elite shooter who also could guard the best perimeter players on every team. Now he's more of a solid defender that can't really guard point guards anymore. So now he's more guarding wings, and he's still a very valuable player. Yeah. Just like Draymond's a very valuable player. But if you were paying Draymond a 30% max or 35% max, your team would be in rough shape. And it's the same thing with Klay. So that to me is what the choice is. Like, maybe he gets a little more than Draymond because he's always made more and shooting is at such a premium, but it's still going to be like, you're going to take a fairly significant cut. Or if you want to get a max somewhere, like, it's not going to be here, because I just don't see any scenario where he signs up there for that kind of money long term.
Yeah, not with the tax implications and all that. And then, the human element here is if they shocked us all and caved and put max-ish type of money on the table for Klay, what's that telling Draymond? It's kind of a slap in his face. So my guess would be he ends up staying there. I think he ends up spending his entire career in a Warriors uniform, and he'll be paid handsomely, but not nearly as handsome.
I think it behooves him to wait, because whatever their offer might be, if they make it, I assume they'll make him an offer. He can only improve that with the way he plays during the season.
Actually, how much of a pay cut can you offer him on an extension?
Well, he could sign for $1 million if he wanted to.
I think you could only go up. So
Al Horford went from making 27 to making 10.
Okay.
Like, there's no issue about the amount you go. What you can't do is like say, I'm going to make 28 and then 2 and then 28. But if you want to go down to, if you wanted to start a 4-year extension if you wanted to sign Draymond's contract, the same one he signed, he could sign that one today if he wanted to.
Even though that would be a $20 million pay cut. Draymond's going to make $20 million less than Klay this year. So keep that in mind. All right. We talked a lot about Donovan Mitchell last week. He can sign an extension this fall. If you want to know more about that, you can go listen to last week's podcast. I don't think we need to rehash that. I'll just give you the numbers though. He can sign 3 years, $145 million. It's eligible. He's eligible to do it now, but the window closes on October 23rd.
Bontemps, you vacationing in Cleveland this summer?
No.
I thought you might disprove.
I spent my life growing up in the surrounding Cleveland area, and it's a lovely place, but I will not be there this summer.
I just like the way he said no.
It's got nothing to do with last week's pod, though.
Yeah, let me just say that you're paid to be a reporter and an analyst, and that's what you were doing last week. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, he can sign, but only between now and October 23rd. And once that window closes, then it opens again next July, which is when I think was a more appropriate time to talk about it.
Yeah, guys who have multiple years left on their deals can extend up until the season starts, and then when you're on the last year deal, you can extend after that.
You can send all the way to the June 30th,
right? All the way till the end.
Free. Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk about DeMar DeRozan. Now, when he signed this contract, which was 3 years and $81 million with the Bulls, there were a lot of people who thought it was an insane overpay. The Bulls made it a huge priority to land him. Showed up at his, it was still COVID times. I don't know if they showed up at his door. I think they did, though. I think Mark Eversley showed up at his door.
Yeah, well, it seemed like he didn't have much on the table, and then all of a sudden the Bulls came in out of nowhere.
Yeah, you remember, like there was like people thought he might take the mid-level exception from the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was like, no, I will take the $27 million a year. Thank you. I will not be taking $5 million or $6 million, whatever it was back then. Right. Anyway, he's played very well in that contract. He's going to be 34 next summer. But he has 1 year left on that deal. He's 2 years. He is eligible to sign.
He'll be 34 next month.
That's 34 right. next
That's
month.
Right.
He'll also be 35, I guess, beginning next
yes.
year. Okay. So keeping that in mind, keeping in mind that he is pretty important to what the Bulls are doing, but he also, I think, would have significant interest on the free agent market and a lot of options. What should the Bulls do? What should DeMar DeRozan do, Bontemps?
I mean, truthfully, if I was the Bulls, I would be trying to trade DeMar DeRozan because I as great as he has been for them, I think they're in a no-win situation here because you either extend him now because, I mean, DeMar's been great the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Aaron, we've seen
his
how
value his value would be pretty high right now if he was traded,
we've seen how Aaron Goodwin has negotiated in Portland with Dame. He likes to come with high heat, and he would be asking for a lot of money. And I would guess if they were going to extend, it would be for a significant bump up from the number he's on, whether that's reasonable or not. And I love DeMar, and he's been fantastic. Like this second act he's had as more of a creator and as a sort of a point forward on offense. He's been amazing to watch, but I don't want to be paying DeMar $35-40 million a year into his late 30s. Like I just don't really know what your goal is if you're doing that. And they're not really going anywhere as it is. So they're just in a really tough spot. I'm not sure what the right answer is. Honestly, I really don't. Well, I would probably try to trade him.
The Bulls are team purgatory right now.
Yes, they are.
They sure are, man.
They are stuck smack in the middle of it.
And they seem to be happy. They're barricading themselves in there.
Yeah, like they kept Vucevic, which
they gave him a pretty above market extension. I would say 3 for $60. That's
nobody focused on that deal too much, but that was one of the more whoa deals of the summer.
You know who was happy about that was Brook Lopez. I mean, and probably wasn't happy about that was the Bucks because I think the Bucks might have been hoping to get him for something around 20, and they ended up having to give him 25.
You know who's really not happy about the Brook Lopez deal?
The Houston Rockets
who made a trade with the Hawks to clear out space because they thought they're about to hand Brook Lopez a pin. So I don't think Vooch's deal maybe had. He was going to get paid by the Rockets regardless of what Vooch got.
Well, that's fair, but regardless, I mean, the Lonzo Ball thing's obviously a basketball tragedy. I mean, that's just a really unfortunate situation.
That's the Bulls, as much as we kind of hammer on the Bulls for being team purgatory, like they were playing really well when Lonzo Ball was there. And
by the way, I'm just happy that, just on a personal level, it's terrible for the Bulls. I'm just happy Lonzo Ball got paid before this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Because,
I mean, good. It's certainly better than if it had been the year before
mean,
he was going to be a free agent as opposed to his first year of his contract.
And there's 100 reasons why guys take long-term contracts. There's 100 reasons why they go for guaranteed contracts and everything like that. He had absolutely horrible turn of events with this, what seemed like a relatively minor knee injury.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've purposely kept it out of the public, what's gone on here. But I know enough to know that, like, trust me, they have sought every knee specialist across the spectrum to try to help this situation, and they can't find an answer for it. And this is a guy who was coming into his own, coming into his prime, looking like he was going to be. He wasn't going to be like a perennial all-star, like maybe some people thought.
He'd become like a 3D guy who was a hell of a like he was a really nice, complimentary, high caliber starter.
He was a perfect fit with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine as a guy who moved the ball around, hit spot up threes at a high rate, and really defended. Like with him and Caruso out there with those two guys and Vucevic, that was a very interesting lineup that could do a lot of stuff. And obviously, it's unfortunate for the Bulls. They really haven't seen that since those first couple months of that contract. But that's why, like, to me, the DeMar thing, it's such a fascinating thing to think about for what they should do, because, like, to your point, MacMahon, they really are team purgatory. And if you're going to stay in purgatory for the next couple of years, I guess the thing you would do is sign DeMar for a couple more years and, like,
I mean, if you're going to extend
Vucevic,
if you're going to extend Vucevic, you might as well extend DeRozan.
That's what I mean.
What they give up for Vucevic in terms of picks?
You know exactly what they gave up. You've been talking about since the day it happened.
The trade was essentially Wendell Carter, Franz Wagner, and Jet Howard, Juwan's kid, who they just drafted.
But the picks were 9 and 11, I believe. I might be off a spot here.
Yes.
Well, they still
8 and 11.
They still owe. Okay, they still owe 2025 second rounder to San Antonio and the 2025 first, top 10 protected, then top 8. If they're team purgatory, there's a pretty decent chance they're giving up another lottery pick. It's a tough way to go about business.
Is that from the DeMar trade?
Yeah. They owe to this. I'm telling you, the Spurs got a nice little stockpile of picks.
They sure do. Yeah, that's right. It's from. I was thinking you were saying that was from the Vucevic trade. That's why I paused for a second.
They already
from the DeMar trade. Right.
My point is they already gave up 2 lottery picks. And now, like, there's a pretty decent chance the pick they give up for DeMar will end up being lottery. It won't be top 8 because it goes top 10, top 8, and then turns into a second rounder. But
still, it's another first they've got out and they've got owed out in the future. I mean, yeah, look, with, like you said, Brian, with the Vucevic extension, I guess I'd probably try to do DeMar for a couple of years, but I just don't know what direction
I would try to trade him. I agree.
No, I'm only saying from the standpoint of, like, if we're trying to game out the way the Bulls have handled this other stuff, I would think that they'll probably try to extend this guy. But yeah, I think they should go the other way for sure.
Yeah, no, I think they will do what I would advise against. It's been pretty consistent.
All right. Let's take a look at the Raptors. They got 2 extension eligible guys.
Speaking of another purgatory team,
I mean, they're not so much in purgatory. I mean, they might be, but they're like frozen. They're a team indecision. So Pascal Siakam has 1 year left on his contract. He is eligible. Let me get the number. The thing on Siakam that is most important to recognize is that if he makes All NBA this year, which he made All NBA 2 years ago.
You don't even need to read Pascal's numbers, because the bottom line is he isn't Supermax eligible. And I think it's safe to say the reason he's not on an extension right now is because if he makes All NBA next year, he'll be Supermax eligible as a free agent when he can make a very significant amount of money more than if he's not. And I would say that's why we're sitting here waiting to see if something gets done there.
And then you've got OG Anunoby. who
Can
you
opt
know,
out of his contract next summer and become a free agent.
Which I short of a terrible unforeseen injury, he's going to opt out of that contract. He's his salary versus his value in the league is out of whack. He can't extend right. He is able to extend right now for 4 years and 116 million. I don't
He
know.
won't be. He won't be. He won't be extending.
I would play that.
He could
one
do
out.
better. He can do better than that. So, but now you have two guys who are potentially going to be unrestricted free agents a year from now. So Toronto,
just like Fred VanVleet. How'd that go?
Just like Kyle Lowry.
I mean,
Lowry, they got something for, but it wasn't great.
Probably wasn't what they could have got at the trade deadline before that.
Yeah. But again, we go to, this is another team that owes a pick, like having a, sell off this year.
They owe a hell of a pick.
Yeah. They owe a top 6 for Jakob Poeltl, which, I mean, really the similarities, there's a lot of similarities with the Bulls here. A play-in team, right? Bottom end of the play-in bracket, who made a trade for a big man and then gave him a pretty big contract this summer. And it's just, still owe for that trade. And it's just very difficult. I guess the Bulls have paid off their Vooch trade, but they still owe him DeRozan.
Well, I would argue the difference between the Bulls and the Raptors is that the Raptors have just had all this talent walk out the door.
Yeah. And then the similarities, though, is like how, with the groups that they have, how are they going to get significantly better?
Yeah,
I've been a step to become a superstar. Like, you can hope for that, but
I mean, that's what they're obviously hoping for. I haven't really understood the direction they've been going in here for a while. And I especially when you look at this Fred VanVleet contract and the fact that he got a third year as a team option.
Yeah.
It just really, like, to me, it says pretty clearly to me, Fred VanVleet did not want to be in Toronto anymore. And that's why he left. And if you allowed this situation to get to the point where he could walk out the door in free agency and get nothing for him, that is a pretty big mistake. And if you look at where the Raps are sitting now, like, I just don't know again, like, I don't even know if it's team purgatory. It's like, what would you say, Brian? Team indecision or team paralysis? Yeah. It's like they just have been frozen in place and not really done anything. It's just like kind of just kept going, like they're just driving in a straight line, not looking to turn anywhere. I just don't know when that's going to change at this point.
I don't know either. Maybe I would say they could see how the season's going, but they've done this before and they'll probably be.
Well, let's just look at 12th. It. Right. Like, let's just look at it quick, right? Like Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, Cleveland, New York, Miami. It's already 6 teams. I think all three of us agree are definitely better than them.
Hell, the Pacers could be, right. Pacers are right there. I mean, the Bulls,
Atlanta, Brooklyn's going to be competitive. Like, yes. It's very possible they're not in the play-in. Like, they could give up the 9th pick or 8th pick in the draft if they don't trade anybody. So
I'm looking at over-unders. They're over-unders 36.5.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at, I got to do math here, which means counting. And I think I'm going to run out of fingers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And I don't think that Miami
and 10th in the East for projected wins.
And I don't know I don't think Miami and Philly are on that list you're looking at because they've been off the board because of the trade stuff.
No, they are.
They are on there. Okay. Yeah. But either way, I mean, we're talking about a borderline making the play-in tournament team.
Right.
After not making it last year, just hired a rookie head coach with a long track record as a player development guy, which would seem to indicate you're going in a direction of trying to focus on that.
I think if they don't do anything, they're sending the 9th or 10th pick to San Antonio this year. Like if they just stay the course and keep these guys and don't make moves.
Most likely outcomes, they miss the playoffs and you're giving up a back end of the lottery pick to the Spurs. And then who knows what happens? Maybe one or both of those guys don't resign.
I know one guy who recently signed an extension that would like that. Greg Popovich.
It's true.
It's a hell of an extension. All right, two guys who are in the same sort of situation, Jamal Murray and Brandon Ingram. Both have 2 years left on their contracts, both eligible for 3-year, $145 million extensions, but both can legitimately believe that they could make the All-NBA team this year, which would enable them to get a ton more. Well, you may not think so, but you don't think Jamal Murray's having a crisis of confidence right now? I do not.
He has the right type of confidence right now, for
and,
sure.
Like, yes, I don't think it was an inspiring season by Ingram, but like,
is he going to be one of the 6 best forwards in the NBA next season?
No, obviously I'm not putting a wager on it, but I'm just saying they're both in the same boat. If you want to reject that chance, you can. But
look, if I was Brandon Ingram and I got offered 3 and 140, what'd you say, 3 and 145 with all the injuries he's had, I would instantly sign that. Not that he's not a good player. He's a good player.
They think very highly of him there.
And he's a good player. But I mean, he's had a ton of injuries. He just played like 35 games this past year. Had this toe injury that cost him a huge chunk of the season.
Yeah, that was there was some frustration. Look, they fired their head of the medical staff, a guy who was one of their big free agent signings, if you wanted, Aaron Nelson. And that there was a lot of shades of gray in that situation.
Yeah.
So
the Jamal situation is very interesting to me.
When he committed to play for Team Canada, and again, you're going to Vegas this week with Team USA. I'll pick him up in a few weeks here. When he committed to playing for Canada, and he hasn't shown up there yet. A lot of the guys who have, like, for example, Josh Hart has not signed his extension yet, but Josh Hart has committed to Team USA. A whole bunch of guys on Team USA have signed extensions. One of the part of the reasons why they're on the team is because they're in good positions with their contracts. Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Austin Reeves. Who else am I missing? A bunch of other guys are in the middle of long-term contracts. Jalen Brunson, who, by the way, just got married. Congratulations to him. My guess is that Josh Hart will have an extension in place by the time.
I look forward to asking him this week if he hasn't signed it yet.
I would be very surprised that he doesn't have an extension by this week. But anyway, Jamal Murray committing to Canada sort of implied that he made sure he's protected. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would say it implied that they've got a chance to potentially win a medal and maybe win the gold medal, and they've never done that. And he's always played for the Canadian team outside of when he was dealing with his knee injury. So I don't know.
If you're advising Jamal Murray, what are you telling him? Or if you're sitting in Jamal Murray's shoes?
I would probably take the money.
Me too.
I don't think, here's the thing. Jamal Murray is a great player. He's never made an all-star team. I don't think that
may not be fair because but I'm not an all-star, but
my point is he's a really good player. There's a ton of really good guards. Like Jalen Brunson just had an incredible season for the Knicks, didn't make the all-star team. Like that's one barrier, right? To make All-NBA, you've got to be one of the 6 best guards in the league. So yes, maybe
during the
he'll
regular
do that.
season. During the regular season, which he's proven he can be that in the playoffs.
Well, and the other thing too with Jamal is Jamal's probably going to be sitting out back-to-backs, I would think. Some of this other stuff, right? You've got to play 65 games to get to that number.
He played 65 on the nose last year. Now that was coming back a year off, but still.
So he might, but again, I would, coming off an ACL injury with 145 sitting there, and I think he because he's young too, because he came in the league super young. So if he extends
Yeah,
for three more years, he would
years
be
old.
right. So he'd be
another bite of the apple when he's 30.
Yeah, he'll finish next season at 27. He'd have 4 years left. He'd be going into free agency as a 30 or 31-year-old, then with a chance to get another huge deal down the road. I would probably take the money and not like think I have a chance to maybe make all NBA next year. But I mean, that's me.
Well, the other
I
thing
would
is,
probably do
honestly, if he's all NBA and it's Supermax, like, could that get to a point where the Nuggets are trying to squeeze and not pay that? And, it could get funky. It's not like the Nuggets are some wild free spending franchise.
Well, I think that would mean that Michael Porter Jr. would be shot to Neptune and they would be paying Jamal Murray. I think that's what would happen.
Is that where the next expansion team's going to be?
Oh, it's going to be, he'd be shot somewhere, which again is another factor here too, where over the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to have 2 more teams in the league. Like, I don't know what exactly year they're going to come in, but like we're clearly headed towards 2 more teams and a bunch more jobs and a bunch more salary cap space to fill in, which is going to be a whole other ripple effect of this stuff to see where that stuff goes from a money standpoint. But yeah, to go back to your question, I would sign, if I was both these guys, if I got offered this extension, I would sign it. I could see Jamal in particular saying, I'm going to wait and see if I can make all NBA. I just think he's got an uphill battle to do so.
Yeah.
But,
and the thing with Murray is, okay, they gave you a max contract already when it was considered at the time a questionable decision. Obviously, it's paid off really, really well and looks brilliant.
And did so like at the first second possible. It wasn't like there was some sort of debate about it. It's like, hey, we're fully committed to you as our guy going forward.
Right. And it's a championship team.
Good decision.
Exactly. It's a championship team. Hey, Joker's signed up long term. You've got unbelievable chemistry with him. Like, life is good and you can get another bite of the apple when you're still in your prime. I think I would do that instead of waiting and seeing and hoping that you could squeeze. It's not an insignificant amount of money. It's millions and millions of dollars more.
Well,
but
again, he committed to the Canadian national team.
Well, I mean, no, again, what I would say to that is if he was going to sign this extension, I would have thought he would have already signed it. No?
I don't know. Josh Hart hasn't signed it.
Yeah, that's true.
Couple more real quick. Rudy Gobert is extension eligible. Now, they paid a lot for him.
Oh boy.
Having said that, he didn't have the greatest season of his career. He's got multiple years left on his deal.
Yeah, I don't really see much need for him to get extended at the moment, even if it's at a reduced number.
Well, I'm just saying, we're talking about these other guys who have 2 years left. I mean, he's on the list.
The Wolves have a whole ton of financial decisions to figure out next summer.
Well, Mike Conley is also extension eligible. He's going to the last year of his deal. The thing there is that once Anthony Edwards' deal with the just signed comes on their books, their payroll is going to be humongous for that market.
Well, look, here right now, they've got $149 million guaranteed for next season, and that's without paying Mike Conley a cent, and that's without having any extension done yet for Jaden McDaniels, who is going to get a hefty extension.
Yeah, we talked about this. I mean, if he just saw what Cameron Johnson got, which was low 90 million guaranteed,
he's going to want that at least. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he is one of the best wing defenders in the league, and is a player.
Yeah, I got a bunch of grief for not voting for Evan Mobley. Part of the reason why I didn't vote for him for all defense was I had him as one of my second team.
Somehow
forwards.
I was able to get both of them on the list.
I'm just saying he's Jay McDaniels is really good. That's all. He's a really good player.
Anyway, I don't think they're extending. I don't think they're extending either of them. But Gobert can get 3 years and 170. he can't do it till September 30th. So it's not something that would happen now. He's committed to playing for France. He gave an interview to L'Equipe in France in the last few days. I saw the translation, and he was saying that he's had a good off season, feels good, and is geared up for it. I'm not, he doesn't have a history of knee injuries where he missed a season like Jamal Murray. So I don't look at the commitment the same way. Maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe Jamal will go on the record.
Well,
this week
those guys also play every year. Like
right.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with that. I mean, I would, you don't think that Jane McDaniels is going to get extended though?
I do. Absolutely.
Oh, I thought you said,
I'm just saying
both of them wouldn't.
No,
that's why.
Well, I just wasn't worth. We're not talking about rookie extensions. We'll talk about that another
part. Go Bear. I think it's more likely he ends up picking up his player option in 25, 26 and working on an extension this summer. Like he's 46.7 mil.
Unless it's one of those situations where perhaps he opts out next year and extends at a lower number for multiple years and picks up some dollars down the road. But they're going to be, like we've talked about a bunch, they are going to be a fascinating team to watch a year from now because they've got a lot of bills all coming due at once, and they don't have the deepest pocketed owners, and they're in a small market. So I don't think they're going to be setting records.
Their ownership is still in some level of uncertainty. Yeah, frankly.
So there's going to be a lot.
But I just have to say he is extension eligible. He's on the list. He's an all-star, I should say. All right. The last one I want to talk about, unless you think I'm missing any. And by the way, some of these guys have already extended. Jaylen Brown already extended. Kristaps Porzingis already extended. Domantas Sabonis already extended. We've had some done already that we didn't talk about. Derek White with the Boston Celtics. He has 2 years left, but he can extend up to 3 years and just under $90 million. That's his max he can extend. It doesn't mean that's what they would offer him. But that's his number that he can go to. They've obviously decided he's their point guard of the present, and I would assume they would see it in the future. There isn't pressure to get something done here, but if I were Boston, I wouldn't want any shenanigans, so I would approach him with it. He's eligible September 30th. He's not eligible now. He's eligible September 30th for 3 weeks, basically between the 30th and the 23rd of October.
Yeah, I think there is pressure to get a deal done, and I would be trying to get one done because I would want to sign him for that number, and I'd do it happily. And I wouldn't want to mess around. I mean, he'd making under $20 million as their starting point guard and a fantastic two-way player. Like, if he got to free agency, he would get a significant raise on that deal. So I would be trying to get him locked up and have him there for the long term, especially after they've cleared the decks and he is their guy quite clearly going forward. So yeah, I don't know if they'll get an extension done for the start of the season, but if I were them, I'd be trying to get it done. And for a guy who's had some injury stuff in his past, I would think that he would be interested in trying to get one done.
He no longer has to spend as much on hair products.
That is true.
He went with the MacMahon. Do you think he does it himself, just like you, MacMahon?
Anybody who pays for a buzz cut, I don't care how rich you are. Like, dude, why? It's like it's a maybe 10-minute max procedure that you just kind of whoop, 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 and then vacuum it up, and you're good. Like, if you pay,
you got to get lined up. I mean, you got to get lined up.
Get your significant other, IT department, neckliner upper, ain't that complicated. He also
doesn't. I also made a mistake. He doesn't have. I was thinking of another former Colorado guy, Spencer Dinwiddie, as far as knee stuff. He hasn't never had a knee issue, but I would, if I was the Celtics, I'd be trying to get him extended for sure.
Spencer Dinwiddie is also extension eligible with the Pistons. Just thought I'd bring that up.
Pistons.
Have we taken a time machine back to the start of his career?
I don't know why I said that because it's in our. I don't know why I didn't catch myself, but it says it in our spreadsheet here. Out of all this information, It says Detroit. I don't know why it says that, but that's why I said it, and I didn't think. So Yes, he did start his career there, and it didn't go well. I think they cut him. Didn't they cut him?
Yes.
I think they cut
They
him.
did.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll correct that. But anyway, he's on there as well. Okay, I enjoyed this for our July 30th discussion. There's, I'll just toss one more in there. Gordon Hayward. Can't see him extending at the same number, but his agent Mark Bartelstein has done a number of 1-year extensions as an agent. I happen to think that Charlotte will cause some issues this year. I'm not predicting like they make
What
the
kind of
playoffs or
issues?
anything. They are going to be a much better team than last year. They are bringing in a ton more talent. Okay, fine. Anyway,
well, let's try to pin you down a little bit on this. What are we saying? They're going to be a playoff team? They're going to be a playing team?
No, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I'm just saying that people totally disregard them as nothing. And
many people are saying that Charlotte could be an interesting team.
What is your official on the record prediction for Charlotte?
I will say I do agree with you. They were my best bet when I was in LA to do the NBA show a couple weeks back. They asked us for our best bets, and I did say Charlotte over is the best bet because I think their over under was, to go back to your thing earlier, MacMahon, I think it was 29 or so, and they were two wins below that last year with no Miles Bridges at all, and with LaMelo all playing like 20 games.
I'm looking at one that has them at 31, and I guess
I would say the over on that too.
31, which just happens to be the last email I got from one of these places.
Yeah,
well, he did not have a great year last year. He did not have a great year last year, but he is extension eligible.
I'm sure Gordon would extend given all the injuries he's had, but I do not think Charlotte should or will be doing.
Tell you what, he'd be better off with a buzz cut than whatever the thing he had last year. My God, it was like a mini mullet type of situation going on for a while.
You know, if you did one of those, you know how they we saw with Tom Brady, where they would like meld the year over year. Like his hair journey has been impressive.
Something.
So is yours. You used to be a buzz cut man, and now you get like.
I know. I miss it.
Now he's got the coif. Now he's got the coif.
I miss my buzz cut, man.
But you paid someone to do it. See, that's how I know when he's got a hell of a contract.
I wasn't as short as you. It wasn't, I had a little bit more there, but yes, I did pay. I paid like,
well, those clippers come with different guards.
I was going those days. I was going to I can't remember who our sponsors in recent past was been, but I was going to chain places to get them done. Now, so
now you've got like a hairdresser. You probably got a whole like hair squad.
No.
Do you even put the goop in your hair yourself, or do you have like people who like come in the morning and do it all up for you?
I will say that the person who cuts my hair like opens the place at a time when it's not usually open for me.
Oh, wow. Do you get like your own seat?
Do I get what?
Do you have like your own little special seat?
No, that'll be ridiculous. But this fine person who cuts my hair makes time for me outside of normal business hours so I'm very appreciative.
Just unbelievable. It's got to be catered to at all times.
Listen, like when you're home, like 1 week out of like
you ain't going there after hours because you're home occasionally there, Chief.
It's before hours. I go before hours.
Whatever. You're not going outside the normal hours because you're just occasionally at home.
We put the violins up earlier, but now that we're talking about Wendy's trouble getting haircuts, we better bring them back out.
Oh, there's no trouble. There's no trouble.
Before we go,
he's not going to be troubled to go in there when the plebes are in there. That's the situation.
I'm going in there tomorrow, or Tuesday, actually. Hey, before we go, Bontemps, I think
you want to show up, folks in Nebraska. You can get Wendy's autograph.
You'll never find me. Go ahead.
I do have some trivia.
And now to present today's trivia question, the whiz of the quiz, Tim Bontemps.
Udonis Haslem has retired officially.
Is he extension eligible?
I'm still stunned he didn't just come back. I'm still stunned he didn't come back and take the money again. But he has retired. So Andre Iguodala is the oldest player in the league now, at least for now, and LeBron is the second oldest player.
Yeah.
He is one of 4 players ever to be one of the 2 youngest players in the league at the start of his career, and one of the 2 oldest players in the league at the end of his career.
KG and Kobe.
Neither of them.
What? You said 4?
He is one of 4. There are 3 other people.
Neither KG.
This is a
or
great
Kobe?
question.
Wow.
Nope.
Could be
Kareem.
one of the youngest.
Kareem wouldn't be it because he played 4 years in college.
Moses
I
Malone.
Nope.
I was going to guess that too. No, he didn't last long enough.
Oh, yes, he did. I guess he started out in the ABA, though.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Moses was playing when he was bald in a mile.
I know. That's right. I always forget that he was like playing with Barkley. All right.
Moses was playing for like the Spurs and stuff.
2 of the 3 are Hall of Fame players.
2 of the 3 are Hall of Fame. I'm trying to think. Can't be Magic. Trying to think,
Not
guys.
Magic.
Okay, let me ask you this: Were they?
They got to be guys.
Were they straight out of high school?
No.
Okay.
Because it's youngest in the league, not like youngest ever.
Yeah. No,
So,
I know. But that's why I started off with KG.
yeah, no. Right. It's this. That's why I wanted to do this. It's a very fascinating.
Dirk's not one of them, is he?
Dirk is not one of them.
What about Jason Kidd?
Jason Kidd is not one of them either.
Yeah, I'm trying to think guys who are like one and dones that had.
Yeah, who played long careers. Oh, I got it. Well, we may not even. What about Jamal Crawford?
It's not. Don't think about one and done guys because it's not one and done guys.
So we're going back in time then.
Well, yes, sort of. One of them played in the ABA. Is a Hall of Famer.
All right, I got another one.
Okay. Shaq is one of them.
Oh, I retire.
Shaq is one. That's right.
All right. Wait, he was giving us hints.
Tim Duncan?
No, he played 4 years.
I know.
Okay, wait a minute.
Well, hold on. Just two of them were Hall of Fame players. One of them was Shaq. Okay. So the other one played in the ABA. So forget Tim Duncan, anybody after that.
Listen, man, I don't know the ABA. Dr. J.
It's not Dr. J. Dr. J didn't play in the NBA till later.
I got to tell you, you got me stumped.
All right. Well, the other Hall of Famer is Rick Barry.
Well, we would have been here a long time.
I know. Yeah. I thought with the ABA thing you might guess him, but Shaq I thought you would get to. So there was a couple interesting LeBron links with this. One is that he obviously played with Shaq.
Guys?
No, there's a third one who was not a Hall of Famer. The other player that had this distinction also coached LeBron.
Paul Silas?
Paul Silas was the other one.
Wow.
Which you're never going to guess that one. So I was going to get the Hall of Famers first and then say
Wendy should have.
Well, no, he was always going to guess he was one of the youngest and oldest players in the league. But
told you, man, Paul Silas was a rookie with the St. Louis Hawks in like 1960. He told me that. All he ever wanted to be.
Yep.
All he ever wanted to be was Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit was making $75,000 a year, and he said he had a mink coat went all the way down to his ankles.
I tell you what, Bob Pettit would have been such a good 12th man in today's league.
Okay, JJ. You know who could have played in today's league?
Who?
Paul Silas. That's right.
Paul Silas.
Nobody would have messed with Paul Silas in any era.
You got that right, man. Oh, man. All right. I enjoyed it for July 30th, and we've gone on a long time. But hey, listen, we're doing fewer, so it's fine. Thank you to Jackson for producing, who's producing this, by the way, from his childhood bedroom this weekend. So
that cute.
Who would have thought, Jackson, when you were growing up, that you'd produce a podcast when you were staring at the posters on your wall of all your heroes?
Hold on. What posters are on the walls? I want to know.
He's probably too old. Or too young. He probably didn't have posters. But I had posters when I was a kid. I also had wallpaper. I put the pins into my wallpaper and just infuriated my parents. I had a Jose Canseco 40-40 poster on my wall. I loved the Bash Brothers as a kid. Anyway, thank you for the Hoop Collective podcast. We'll talk to you in a few days.
Adios, amigos.